You've probably heard the names Cain, Abel, and Seth, but what if I told you those three weren't the only children of Adam and Eve, and maybe not even the first? Hidden within ancient texts and whispers from forgotten scrolls, there's a version of Genesis most people have never seen, a version that dares to reveal a truth far deeper than what Sunday school ever taught. Who were the true children of Adam and Eve? And why were some of their names never written in the Bible? The book of Genesis says something strange. After naming Cain, Abel, and Seth, it simply adds, "And Adam had other sons and daughters." Just like that. No names, no details, no stories. Why would the Bible, which gives long genealogies for other people, choose silence when it comes to the full list of Adam and Eve's children? What's being hidden behind those few words? Could it be that some of their children were involved in events too controversial to be included in the Holy Canon? Before we begin, take a deep breath. Because what you're about to hear might change the way you see the beginning of everything. If this message stirs something in your heart, if it makes you question, remember, or wonder, don't let it fade. Leave a like to help this truth reach more people. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a revelation like this. And please share this video with someone who needs to remember where we truly come from. Finally, tell us in the comments, from which part of the world are you watching this awakening? Ancient writings outside the Bible, like the Book of Jubilees and other apocryphal texts, do name other children. They speak of daughters like Awan and Azura, and even suggest that Cain married one of them. Yes, Cain married his sister, but the Bible never tells you that directly. These texts also hint at something more disturbing, that not all of Adam's children were fully human. Some might have carried something different in their blood, something the elders of Israel didn't want, preserved. But even more intriguing are the theories that Cain himself might not have been Adam's true son. Some ancient Jewish traditions suggest Cain was the result of a union between Eve and a being not of earth. They say the serpent in Eden wasn't just symbolic. It represented an entity with real power, one that left its mark on Cain's very nature. Could that be why God marked Cain and sent him away? Was it more than punishment? Was it separation from the true lineage? If Cain's blood was different, if he wasn't Adam's true son, then what does that mean for the rest of humanity? Was there a separate lineage created from the very beginning, one destined for conflict, exile, or even corruption? Some ancient scrolls imply that the true line, the one chosen by God, didn't begin with Cain or Abel at all. Instead, it began with Seth. But why him? What made Seth the replacement child? And what had to be erased for his story to become the foundation of the righteous bloodline? Seth's role is strange. He arrives after the death of Abel, almost as a divine response, yet very little is said about his life in Genesis. We only find traces of him in the genealogies that lead to Noah and beyond. But apocryphal texts hint that Seth was more than just a replacement. He was chosen. His descendants were said to carry the light of Eden, the memory of the pure garden, and a promise buried beneath generations. But even here, the question remains, what happened to the rest of Adam and Eve's children? Were they forgotten or deliberately erased? One theory suggests that some of Adam and Eve's children chose another path entirely. After the fall, as sin entered the world, division began to spread among their offspring. Some remain near the memory of Eden, walking in reverence. Others moved far away, both physically and spiritually. They became builders of cities, creators of strange customs, and followers of knowledge that came from elsewhere. Could this be the origin of the two lines of humanity that would later clash? And then there are the daughters, those whom the Bible mentions but never names. Why were their stories left out? In the patriarchal structure of ancient scripture, perhaps women were seen as less relevant to the historical record, but spiritually, that silence speaks volumes. What if those daughters held secrets? What if they passed down a memory that couldn't be erased, even if their names were? In some texts, it's said that one of Eve's daughters rebelled and disappeared from all written history. Some researchers believe that these unnamed daughters were key to understanding what really happened after the fall. While the sons were sent to work the land and establish bloodlines, the daughters may have preserved spiritual knowledge, whispers of the garden, visions of angels, and even encounters with beings from beyond. Imagine a generation of women carrying secrets that could unravel the official narrative. And yet they were erased, their voices lost, not because they were unimportant, but perhaps because they were too powerful. One story from the Book of Adam and Eve speaks of a daughter who tried to return to Eden. She dreamed of the tree of life and believed she could find it again. But when she approached the boundary of the garden, she was stopped by something terrifying, an angel with a fiery sword. She fell to the ground and wept, not because she was afraid, but because she remembered. That memory of paradise was still alive, in her blood. Could it be that some of Eve's daughters held a connection that the sons never did? The lost scrolls, often hidden or dismissed as heresy, reveal a different kind of history, one where Adam had children who saw the world as it was before the curse, and who struggled to keep that vision alive as darkness crept in. These scrolls, like the first book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees, weren't included in most Bibles. Why? Because they told stories that didn't fit the structure. Stories of other beings, other children, and a war for truth that began long before any flood came. In one of those texts, it is said that Adam tried to write down everything he remembered about Eden. He created a record, a scroll of memory, that included the names of all his children. But that scroll was never found. Some say it was taken to heaven. Others believe it was hidden beneath the earth to protect it from those who would twist the truth. What if that scroll held the names of daughters and sons who were never mentioned again? What if the real story of Eden's legacy is still buried, waiting to be revealed? Imagine a scroll written by the first man to ever walk with God, documenting not just events, but emotions, visions, and warnings. If such a record ever existed, it would be more than history. It would be a spiritual map of humanity's beginning. Some ancient traditions claim this first scroll of Genesis was passed down secretly through generations, kept only by the purest line, until it vanished completely during the time of Enoch. What knowledge did it contain, and who decided it was too dangerous for the world to keep? Among the oldest oral traditions, there's a tale that Adam once gathered all his children and told them the truth of the garden, what he saw, what he lost, and what God promised would one day return. But not all of them believed. Some mocked him, some feared him, others left and never came back. From that day forward, a division formed. One lineage stayed, close to the mountain of God. The other moved east, building cities and forgetting the voice that once walked with them in the cool of the day. Those who remained became the keepers of the light. Their descendants would eventually include Enoch, Methuselah, Noah, and Abraham. This wasn't just a genetic line, it was a spiritual one, a line that remembered. But what about the others, the ones who were left out of the text? If they too were children of Adam and Eve, then what became of their story? Were they erased because of rebellion or because of something they knew? Many believe that the early scribes and religious leaders feared these alternative stories. Including them in the canon might raise questions that challenge the structure of power. After all, if the official story only told part of the truth, how could people trust what came next? So the scrolls were hidden, the names were removed, and the world was left with a version of Genesis that begins with mystery and hides the full legacy of the first family. As time passed, legends of Adam's hidden scroll faded into myth, but fragments of its content survived in scattered texts, some preserved by early Jewish mystics, others buried in forgotten caves. These fragments speak not only of names, but of destinies. One name never mentioned in the Bible was said to belong to a daughter of Eve who saw visions of the coming flood. She cried out to her family, warning them, but they did not listen. Her fate? Unknown. Her name? Erased. But her voice, some say, still echoes in the silence of Scripture. And then there's the mystery of the Watchers, those strange beings mentioned in the Book of Enoch. Were they drawn to the daughters of Adam because of beauty alone, or was there something divine still lingering in their blood? These daughters, born before the laws of Moses and the covenants of Abraham, may have carried a purity that heaven and hell both recognized. The offspring of these unions would become the Nephilim, giants and warriors. But where did they go, and why is their origin so quietly buried? If the true children of Adam and Eve included beings both human and something more, then the story of Genesis is far more complex than we were taught. It becomes not just a tale of creation, but of conflict, of bloodlines, secrets, and sacred knowledge. The idea that Eve bore children with destinies beyond the garden changes everything. Were they messengers of light or carriers of rebellion? And why do the oldest scrolls seem to suggest both? Some early Christian texts even hinted that the battle between good and evil didn't start with Cain and Abel, but with a deeper struggle between the children of light and the children of shadow, both born from the same mother. This battle, they claimed, shaped the course of the ancient world, not through empires or armies, but through inheritance, through the very DNA of the first humans. Could it be that we've inherited more than we know from these forgotten sons and daughters? There are ancient rabbis who believed that Adam's first children inherited memories, not just of Eden, but of heaven itself. They were born from two beings who had walked with God, who had heard his voice without fear. Imagine what kind of awareness those children carried, and imagine the weight of that memory as it faded with each generation. Some say that's why the early world became so corrupt, because those memories were suppressed, twisted, or intentionally silenced by those who feared what they revealed. In one apocryphal tradition, it's written that Adam warned Seth about a coming deception, that one day the descendants of their own blood would turn away from truth and mix with forces that came from beyond the earth. Seth, then, became the protector of the sacred knowledge. He was said to have written his own scrolls, buried on a mountain that would later become sacred to generations of prophets. But once again, those scrolls disappeared, either destroyed or hidden until the appointed time. What's even more shocking is that some early Christian sects believed Jesus himself was the fulfillment of Seth's bloodline, not Cain's, not Abel's, but the preserved line of light. That means the real war didn't start in Eden. It started in the womb of Eve, with children who would one day stand on opposite sides of a battle that still continues. One line preserving truth, the other seeking control, deception, and erasure. And both walking the earth to this very day. If all this is true, then what we were taught about the beginning is only part of the story. The Bible opens with a garden, a serpent, a fruit. But between those lines is a deeper mystery. A family torn apart by invisible forces, a scroll written and hidden, and children born with roles they never chose. The question now is, why was all of this hidden from us? And what happens when the true names are finally spoken again? Some believe the answer lies in the silence between verses. The Bible gives us glimpses, but never the full picture. It's in the space between Cain's exile and Seth's birth, between the mention of sons and daughters and the genealogies that skip their names. That's where the hidden history lives, not just in what was written, but in what was removed, in what was too dangerous, too mysterious, or too divine to preserve in plain sight. Even today, scholars are uncovering fragments, ancient scrolls in desert caves, forgotten writings from early church fathers, secret codices sealed by time. These documents don't deny Genesis. Instead, they fill in the blanks. They speak of sacred trees beyond the garden, of heavenly beings who taught forbidden arts, and of children who saw visions too holy to be recorded. It's not fantasy. It's testimony, preserved by those who refuse to let the full truth die. And while many dismiss these accounts as legends or myths, they all point to the same hidden thread. The story of Adam and Eve didn't end with exile. It began a chain of events that still affects every soul on earth. The real war wasn't over a fruit. It was over inheritance, over which children would carry the divine breath and which would lose it. That battle continues even now beneath the surface of history and theology. Perhaps this is why the scroll was hidden, to protect the world from truths it wasn't ready to face, or maybe to preserve a mystery that could only be revealed when the time was right. And now that these fragments are being uncovered, the question echoes louder than ever. Who were the true children of Adam and Eve, and why was their story buried for so long? If Adam's children were divided from the beginning, between those who remembered Eden and those who rejected it, then we are the legacy of that split. The ancient scrolls suggest that each descendant carried more than just physical traits. They inherited direction, either toward light or toward darkness. And over time, the memory of who belonged to which path faded, but the influence remained. Some built civilizations with justice and awe for the Creator. Others spread violence, deception, and rebellion, repeating the choice that began with Eve, but extended through every generation after. The Book of Jubilees goes further, describing rituals, visions, and warnings passed down through Adam's righteous children. One of them, it says, saw a great destruction coming and carved a message into stone so it would survive the flood. Another was said to walk with angels and learn the names of stars, writing them in a lost language now forgotten by mankind. These are not the stories of mere farmers and shepherds. They are stories of a bloodline carrying divine echoes, one that Satan himself sought to corrupt before the promise could be fulfilled. This war of bloodlines between those who remembered God's breath and those who turned to other powers is hidden under the surface of nearly every ancient myth. From the giants of old to the kings who claimed descent from gods, many civilizations reflect pieces of this forgotten narrative. Could it be that they all trace back to children of Adam and Eve, some loyal to the Creator, others seduced by a different light? If so, then the truth about Genesis is more than religious history. It is the spiritual key to understanding all of humanity. There are some who believe that the names of the true children were sealed in a book kept in heaven, one that would only be opened at the end of days. This book of remembrance, as some call it, would not only restore what was lost, but expose what was hidden. Perhaps the first scroll of Genesis was only a shadow of this final revelation, a whisper of names long forgotten, names that still matter to God. And maybe you are part of that forgotten line, waiting for the day your true origin is revealed. Some ancient Christian mystics believed that the children of Adam and Eve were not only physical descendants, but carriers of spiritual assignments. Each was born into a world already at war, a world where knowledge could either bring life or destruction. The scrolls that were hidden, the names that were erased, they weren't just casualties of time. They were intentional omissions, designed to keep humanity from understanding its full identity. Because if we knew who we truly came from, we might begin to see what we were truly meant to become. It's possible that the original scroll of Genesis, written not by Moses, but inspired by the first, Witnesses held revelations about the nature of creation that our modern texts only hint at, things like the true purpose of Eve's children, the relationship between their birth order and their spiritual roles, and the secrets Adam passed down on his deathbed. If this scroll named daughters who prophesied, sons who resisted evil, and offspring who walked between realms, then hiding it served a purpose: to limit what we believe is possible for ourselves. The more we explore these ancient sources, the clearer it becomes that Genesis was never meant to be simple. It was sacred, yes, but layered. Every silence hides a signal. Every missing name echoes with intent. When we ask why the Bible gives Cain and Seth so much attention, but skips over the other sons and daughters, we're really asking a deeper question. Who decides which parts of our history are worth remembering? And what if the parts that were removed are the ones we need the most? In the end, this isn't just about curiosity or forgotten facts. It's about identity. If the children of Adam and Eve were more than names, if they were carriers of divine fragments, then their erasure is not just a loss of history, but a theft of calling. Somewhere in the ruins of ancient scrolls and the margins of old texts, their voices still cry out, and maybe, just maybe, they're calling us to remember what they were forced to forget. What if the reason the names were removed wasn't just political or theological, but prophetic? Some early teachers believed that those erased from Genesis would reappear at the end of the age, not physically, but spiritually, through those who carry their same essence. That means the children of light and darkness are not just distant ancestors, but active forces within us today. Every human may be walking in the footsteps of one of those firstborn, unaware of the ancient choice their soul still reflects. This isn't allegory. It's a spiritual pattern written from the beginning. Imagine if the lineages of Genesis are not only bloodlines, but also blueprints, that each child represented a type of humanity, one who remembers, one who forgets, one who obeys, one who rebels. In that sense, Cain and Abel were only the beginning of a wider spectrum. Some were artists, builders, and dreamers. Others were destroyers, sorcerers, and deceivers, and all of them came from the same parents, Adam and Eva, who carried both divine light and the pain of the fall. Their children inherited both, and so did we. That's why recovering these names, these stories, matters. It's not just for historical curiosity, it's for spiritual clarity. If you knew your soul was patterned after a forgotten daughter who carried wisdom the world rejected, wouldn't you want to know her name? If you felt the war between light and shadow within you, wouldn't you want to know which line you came from? These aren't questions of ancestry, they're questions of destiny, and the first scroll of Genesis might hold the keys we were never meant to lose. According to some fragments, Adam didn't just write about Eden, he wrote about what would come after. He saw floods, he saw towers reaching heaven, he saw kings rising from cursed blood and prophets rising from the righteous. He saw his children multiplying like stars, but also turning away from the source. If this vision was recorded in that scroll, and that scroll was hidden or taken, then humanity has been walking blind ever since. Blind to its past, blind to its inheritance, blind to its final destination. But blindness can be reversed. Throughout Scripture, God promises that in the last days, what was hidden will be revealed. That which was sealed will be opened. The book of Revelation speaks of scrolls that no one could open except the Lamb. Could one of those be the original scroll of Genesis, the one Adam wrote, the one that holds the names of every forgotten child? If so, then what we've considered lost may only be waiting. Waiting for those with eyes to see and hearts to believe that the beginning was never meant to stay buried. And now the question reaches you, not as a scholar, not as a historian, but as a soul. Who are you in the story of Genesis? Are you the child who remembers? The one who still hears Eden in dreams? Or are you the one who turned away, who followed cities and shadows, who forgot the voice that once walked in the garden? The answer doesn't come from DNA or family trees. It comes from the Spirit. And sometimes the Spirit remembers what history forgets. So perhaps this was never about the names themselves, but about awakening the legacy they carry. You don't need to find a buried scroll to know that you were made for something greater. The truth has always echoed beneath the surface, between the verses, inside the long silences of Scripture. Adam's real children were never just about blood, they were about calling. And now, that calling is being restored. Piece by piece, name by name, line by line. Because somewhere in a garden we can no longer see but still long for, our story began. And perhaps, in a scroll that heaven still keeps, your name is already written. Not just as a descendant of Adam and Eve, but as a bearer of the light they lost. The true children are rising again, not to rewrite the past, but to finish what was started in the beginning. If this message touched something deep within you, don't let it stay in silence. Like this video if your heart felt the weight of these forgotten names. Subscribe and be part of this journey to recover what was erased from the beginning. Share this with someone who still believes there's more to the story, someone searching for the truth beneath the surface. And before you go, write in the comments the city or country where you're watching from, because maybe you too are part of that hidden lineage now awakening.